In the cheesecake is 2.5 pounds of cream cheese, 16 ounces of sour cream, 6 eggs that are already broken and put into a measuring cup. It's really important when you're making this that these ingredients are at room temperature, that they are not cold, because they really all need to blend in very well with each other. It also has vanilla, fresh lemon juice, and a pistachio paste. And you can usually buy a pistachio paste at a gourmet food shop. But today I'm going to make my own, and I'm going to show you how I do that. It's a very easy process. And when it's all mixed, we're going to add in some melted white chocolate to finish it off and fold that in and pop it in the oven and let it bake. To make pistachio paste, all you really need to do is find some raw shelled pistachios at your grocery store. The greener the better. And you just blanch it in some water with a little bit of sugar in it. It's going to sweeten up the pistachios. It's also going to soften them up so that they can process more easily into a paste. And you probably blanch them for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and then rinse them off in the sink and rub them out on a towel, and that will separate all of the skins. Peel the skins off, and then you're ready to make your paste. And all it is putting it into a food processor and grinding it down for quite a while. So normally, as this grinds down, it will turn into chunks, and then it will turn into sort of a fine flour, and then it will turn into a paste. And once it becomes the paste consistency, if you need to loosen it up a little bit just to make it so it's more like a smoother batter, but you don't want it too thin, you would just add a few drops of very warm water to it and continue to process it. So we're going to go ahead and process this and show you the finished product at the end. So we have got this process down to a nice thick paste. It's important that you don't feel any of the nuts in it. You don't want any of that hard texture of the nuts in the cheesecake. So this should be a very, very smooth paste, but it's a little too thick. So I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of warm water to this, and we'll continue to process it. And so our paste is finished, and look at how nice and smooth our paste has come out. It's nice and green and smooth, and it tastes wonderful, and it smells beautifully. So we're going to reserve this because this is going to get mixed into our batter. We're going to add our softened cream cheese into our bowl. This is going to get processed with the sugar on a medium speed so that it becomes nice and creamy. You don't want any lumps of the cream cheese in your cheesecake. To this, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar and continue to blend it in. You will know at this stage if this is combined good enough, and if there are no more lumps in your cream cheese, you can go on to adding some of your other ingredients. I'm going to give this just another minute to blend, and then we're going to add our eggs to this. And you can see how nice and creamy that is. So to that, we are going to add 1 egg at a time on a very slow speed, just until they're all incorporated and really well mixed in. You don't want to beat this too fast because you don't want to beat air into the eggs in the batter. Again, make sure to intermittently scrape down the sides of your bowl. And you want to get up inside the batter along the bowl as well, because there's usually going to be some cream cheese that's stuck to the bowl down there. With the eggs in, I'm going to add our vanilla and our lemon juice. So it's 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. We're going to scrape down our sides, and then we're going to add our pistachio paste. And you want to make sure you're getting all of the solid cream cheese off the bottom of the bowl. And we are going to add about 1/4 cup of our paste. This is going to give it a really great green color for St. Patrick's Day, but also a really wonderful pistachio flavor. And we've got a really beautiful, very light green color just from our pistachio paste. And the last ingredient that we want to add in is the sour cream. We add this last because you don't want to overmix the sour cream. If you do, it could give it a very cottagey cheese type of a texture, and you don't want that. So you only want to blend this in until it's just fully blended and no more. We have our batter all set, and now we're going to fold in our white chocolate to it. And instead of putting the white chocolate right into the batter, just in case it may seize up, the best practice is to put some of your batter in a separate bowl and add your white chocolate to it. This way, if you screw it up, you're not wasting your whole batter and ruining the whole thing. So we are going to pour in some batter. I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of white chocolate and fold that into that. You want to have more batter than you do chocolate when you're doing this. And then this you can pour right into your larger bowl of batter and fold that in. My trusted assistant here is taking my dishware, and you're just going to lightly fold that in. Make sure that it's fully incorporated throughout. And the key when making this is not to make any one flavor overpowering the other one. So when this is cooked and you bite into it, you want to taste some of the white chocolate, and you also want to taste some of the pistachio. I think that's pretty well incorporated. And so now we're going to get ready to put it in our pan so that it can go in the oven. We have our prepared cheesecake pan. This is a professional pan that I like to use, which has a bottom which separates to help unmold the cheesecake. But if you just have a regular springform pan that clips on the side, that'll work just as well. And so that we don't get any water, because we're going to set this into a water bath when we bake it, so that no water comes up in the pan, I'm just going to give it an extra 2 layers of aluminum foil to keep it from taking on any water. And I'm going to fold these up until they go well over the top of the pan. And then I'm going to turn them in on themselves and mold them right at the lip. And I don't want any condensation to get into the cheesecake. So these are just going to get slightly pushed down right below the rim of the cheesecake pan. Again, turning them into themselves. Make sure they're nice and tight to the cake pan. I would also do this if I had a springform pan as well. And inside, we've buttered the inside of the pan, and I've laid down a piece of parchment on the bottom, because when this is done, I'm gonna flip it over on its bottom, and I'm gonna take that off in order to decorate the cake. I like to use these disposable roasting pans. They work well. I double them so that they have some structure to them. And you're just gonna pour your batter in. And your batter should come to about, I would say, an inch from the top of the cheesecake pan. Give it a good shake so that you get all the ridges on the top of it down. You want a nice smooth top. If you see any air bubbles, just try to pop them. Before we put the water in the pan, we're going to actually set this in the oven. It's going to prevent any mishaps or accidents from happening to actually carry it full of water over to the oven. So my oven is preheated to 325. Once that's in the oven, I'm going to very carefully pour just regular tepid tap water into the bottom of the pan. It's important to really have a temperature gauge in your oven so that you know exactly how the temperature is regulating inside. This needs a very slow cooking process. You don't want the cheesecake to brown. You want it to cook very slowly. The faster you cook a cheesecake and the more well done you cook a cheesecake is what causes it to crack. And we don't want this to crack. So we're going to cook it very slow. I like to keep track of the temperature in the oven, and if I have to turn it down just a little bit to bring the temperature down, I know that I can do that. It's been a little bit over an hour. We're going to check on our cheesecake and see how it is doing. So I have not opened the oven at all during this process, and just a little bit of poke on it shows me that it's a spongy texture, but it's not wet in the middle. So this cheesecake is done. I'm going to turn the oven off, and I'm going to let this sit in an open oven probably for about another 20 minutes, just to let it cool down some. I'll take it out of the oven. I will remove it from the water bath, and then I will let it cool completely on the counter before putting it in the fridge to refrigerate overnight so that we can go ahead and decorate it tomorrow. Well, our cheesecake is all refrigerated and cooled down, and it's time to decorate it. I have inverted our cheesecake upside down, and we're going to take the bottom off of what will now be the top of the cheesecake. Look how beautiful that is. A nice green cheesecake for St. Patrick's Day. I can't wait to break into that. And all I'm going to do to decorate this is to do a little bit of chopped pistachios that we have left over from when we blanched the pistachios. And I'm just going to do these in a little bit of a ring around the cheesecake. This is a really great, easy dessert that you can serve to your family or to any guests that you may have coming over for dinner, or even a St. Patrick's Day brunch. You can typically get about 12 slices out of this, 16 if you cut them smaller. And you'll notice I have different size chunks of pistachios because I like a little bit of a finer look, but also some rougher chopped pistachios as well. And just go very slowly around the ring of the cheesecake. You can pick up what's left on the platter after you're done. And I've got some white chocolate here that I have refrigerated. You want to keep this cold because if you don't refrigerate it and chill it a little bit, the heat from your hand is just going to start melting it. But I'm just going to shave this right in the ring of the pistachios. And I'm just going to garnish mine with a little bit of nasturtium leaves from my garden. You should always garnish your platters when you're presenting something to your guests. It makes a really nice presentation and it's very thoughtful. And I've got a few yellow pansies that I'm going to put on the top. And there's a beautiful St. Patrick's Day cheesecake. And so we're going to cut our slice. It's important when you're cutting cheesecake, if you want to have nice clean slices, to have a damp rag on hand to wipe your knife every time you cut a slice. And this will keep the edges of your cheesecake nice and clean. And let's see how this tastes. That is to die for. Thank you so much for joining us this week. I hope you learned something, and I hope that I inspired you to go out and make a special dessert for St. Patrick's Day this year. If you ever miss any of our videos, they are on YouTube at Home with Joseph, and you can also follow me on Instagram as well at Home with Joseph. Thanks so much.
Hey, Selena. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Making the Most Fabulous Cheesecake in the Whole World that I've ever had. This is my dear friend, Selena Kulafako. She was part of Helen's Fabulous Cheesecakes in New York City. And her mom is the mastermind of all of these cheesecake recipes, a few of which they have both taught me. So welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How is your mom doing?
She's doing well. She's in Manhattan and she's okay. She got her first shot. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Are you keeping her busy making cheesecake for you?
Oh my God. I mean, the things that come out of her mind are just amazing. And I was watching it. Joe, you took me back. You really did.
I know, right? Remember?
Oh my God. I do.
So Helen is now retired and doesn't have her shop anymore, but she does still actively bake and cook at home. Selena, how did your mom get started with developing these cheesecake recipes?
Okay. So my mother is the type of person that will look at something and will say, you know what, I think I can make that better. So she wanted to create just plain New York cheesecake, and she started with that, and batch after batch of discarded cheesecakes that didn't work, formulas that didn't work out. I mean, I remember coming home from work and she'd be there at the mixer at 10 o'clock at night, just having to get that cheesecake perfected. And she finally did. And she started with a plain cheesecake, and she went into a white chocolate raspberry, and then a pistachio and a hazelnut and a marble cheesecake. And the list just kept growing. Excuse me, that's my cat. Attention. And finally, I said, Mom, why don't we take this and go into a business in our own right? She was at the time a partner in a cafe on Mulberry Street called La Bella Ferrara. Right. And they had Italian pastries and all different types of things. And being a part owner, she decided to investigate, the best that New York City had to offer: chocolate mousse cakes and carrot cakes, and dealt with all these great companies, Little Pie Company, the Jean Kahn, who is an amazing French baker. Yeah. And finally, she kind of outgrew where she was. And she said, I wanted to strike out on my own. And so we did. We went to Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn,
Yay.
And, yeah, and that's where we met you.
It is.
And we opened up about a month before 9/11.
Yeah.
Timing, yes.
Yeah.
And after that, we just, we decided to just make cheesecakes retail. We were originally going to do wholesale. So as you know, the cheesecakes were the main issue. So the main part of it. So we called it Helen's Fabulous Cheesecake.
Yeah.
And we had a really, really great time there. It was a wonderful place.
It was a beautiful cafe. And if I remember correctly, it was written up in the New York Times. And they quoted Helen as the Martha Stewart of cheesecakes, right?
Yes, I think that was Ed Levine.
Ed Levine, that's right.
Yeah.
So
He was going around looking for New York cheesecakes.
Yeah, so that was quite a nice thing to have that write up for her. Well, I remember, being in the shop and both of you teaching me the cheesecake recipe, and I know when I tried to cook it on my own, it even took me a few times to get used to making her cheesecakes because she's very specific about it. And I know one of her biggest premises is that she only believes in using the highest quality ingredients when making cheesecakes. So she would actually source out the best of the best ingredients to make these with.
Do you remember that company? It was called Deschwa.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And she used to get hazelnut paste from Italy and the pistachio paste.
And so she used to get a really high quality pistachio paste. And that's one of the things that I wanted to comment on was it's difficult to get that level of quality in a pistachio paste for residential people. You can find some varieties online on Amazon, but their pistachio pastes come with, some have sugar in them, some have palm oils in them. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the kind that she used was just
the kind that
strictly ground pistachios. And so that's why.
But it did have a little bit of oil. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, that's okay.
There was just a slight amount of oil, but that was, I think, the natural processing of the nut.
From the nut, right. So, but what I love about Helen's story is that she totally taught herself.
Yeah.
Which is so much what home economics is about. And not only did she teach herself, but she taught you and passed down a legacy that, I mean, this is her legacy. These recipes are something that you'll never forget. And you can then pass those on to your son, Alexander, and so forth. And, so your mom created a great legacy. We've got a few questions that came up, and I'd love to go over them with you if you'll help me with them. The first question is, why do you leave it in the oven to cool? So it was actually Helen who taught me this, which is when the cheesecake is finished, you don't want to take it out of a super hot oven into a cold environment because that will cause the cheesecake to crack and also sometimes collapse the middle. So allowing it to stay in there, it'll just finish cooking it a little bit longer. The temperature will lower to a reasonable temperature that you can then take the cake out and then allow it to cool further on the counter. Do I have that correct? Am I remembering that?
Yes. And I remember something that she told me. I have yet to attempt a cheesecake on my own. But she said, when you shut the oven off, you jiggle the pan a little just to see, it has to have the consistency of like, almost like a Jello.
Right.
And
but a little bit
no
from,
wetness on the top.
right. Yeah.
So that I remember.
Yeah, I remember that too. She used to,
water bath is so important.
Yes, she was like
that's
the
what's gonna
author.
save-
She would always drill that into us.
Oh my God. And she used to yell at me, make sure you put the water in after it's in the oven. Don't do it before because you could drop it.
Selena, did you come up with these recipes on your own? Did you and your mom develop these all on your own? These are not from cookbooks.
They're not from cookbooks. What she did is I think she researched some basic recipes. At that time, this was 2001. So we were just looking online to see what we can find. And she didn't want this because it had fillers, or she didn't want something else because they wanted you to put flour. And she, through trial and error, refined it into her own.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's what I remember. And I remember her telling me, certain ingredients that you add, you have to be conscious that if that has sugar in it, you've got to lower the amount of sugar that you're adding. And one of the things that I think makes these cheesecakes so incredibly amazing is her cheesecakes are always very light and airy. They're not these super dense brick-like type of cheesecakes, but they're not overly sweet. So you're not tasting just sugar, you're actually tasting the white chocolate and the pistachio, and it's not overly sugary, which I absolutely love because I think people use too much sugar in recipes.
They do.
Let's see the next question. Does she have a cheesecake book? Helen has her own personal cheesecake book, which I have had the pleasure of seeing, which has lots of handwritten notes and pieces of paper in them. I think most of them are in Helen's head at this point. And
No, I got them.
yeah.
I wrote them down.
And I think that's sort of the beauty of it, is that she taught herself and therefore she memorized them. Again, home economics. Most home cooks didn't go to school for that. They learned from their elders, and they did and did and did and failed and retried until they perfected something. And usually I find home cooks are usually better than the most trained chefs out there because their heart and soul go into it.
Yeah, but they're tough when you want to get directions. Mom, how much sour cream are you putting in there? Well,
Right.
I know what it looks
You gotta
like.
feel it.
Come on.
Right, exactly. What did you grease the pan with? Butter, always butter cheesecake. So just a light coating of butter is all you need. You don't need a crust. So most of Helen's cheesecakes did not have crust. There were a few that did, but no, these cheesecakes, they also don't have any flour in them. She never made a cheesecake with flour to hold it together. So these are pure dairy. And again, I think that's what lends to the really beautiful texture and flavor and taste of them when people have them. What other variations can you use for decorating the top of a cheesecake? Well, so I think it depends on the cheesecake. And I know your mom, God, used caramel. And if she used fruit, I believe she boiled them down herself, right? She
It was the
never,
white chocolate raspberry, because she would make
yeah,
the
the
raspberry
flavors.
jam
Yes.
herself. Oh,
Yes. So you can use anything from fresh, you can simply just put fresh fruit on a cheesecake. You can use, if you're cooking cheesecake at home and you're not that experienced, you can actually take a jar of jam and a little bit of lemon juice and just melt it down on the stove and put a thin layer of that on top of your cheesecake just for a little extra flavoring. But chocolate, melted chocolate, caramel, nuts, fruit, there's a whole range of things that you can use on a cheesecake. I think it's,
pralines.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Let's see, I don't have one of those KitchenAid makers. Can I use a hand mixer? So I personally would say no. I would say you could probably use the hand mixer to cream the cream cheese with the sugar. But I know Helen was very specific in what she taught me, in that the mixer has to be on low. The whole time that you're mixing this, you don't want to whip air into it. It must be on low, and it's a very slow process incorporating every single ingredient into it. And somebody had asked, why can't I just put all the eggs in at once? The eggs need one at a time to fully combine with the fat ratio that's in the mix, that if you dumped them all in, you might end up actually curdling the mixture. So she was very specific about that. And I think if somebody uses a hand beater, it's just going to incorporate too much, that it's going to ruin the texture of the cake. I mean, I think she always had so much consistency in the texture of her cakes that, so I would say probably not. Maybe whip your cream cheese with that, but then move to a spatula or a spoon to incorporate everything else. It's a little bit more work, but I think you'll get a better product. If there is no flour, would they be considered gluten-free? Yep, they would be. So just purely dairy and sugar. That's all that's in them. Can I use pistachio oil or extract instead of paste? Thoughts, Selena?
You'd have to be careful with the amount because, when you're using an extract, it's much more concentrated.
Right.
You could try it in small quantities. My mother always tells me you could always add, but you can't take away.
Right.
So maybe a couple of teaspoons at a time.
Yeah. I think for me, what I love about her cake is that none of her cakes had one flavor overpowering the other. And that was the beauty of them, was you bit into it and you actually tasted the flavor of every single thing that was in it. And I know she never used, she really only used vanilla and maybe almond extract, but I think she got most of her flavoring from pastes or chocolate or something like that. So, but that's a great point. If you do want to experiment with extracts or anything else, add them a little bit at a time and taste your batter, because you can never take it out once it's in there, but you can keep adding more till it gets to a flavor that you actually like. So thank you. That's a great point for people. Do you always incorporate nuts in the batter? What do you do if you have nut allergies? That's a great question. Not all cheesecakes have the nuts incorporated into it. That just happens to be a pistachio white chocolate cheesecake. And I loved doing it because we're coming up on St. Patrick's Day, and it's a beautiful green cake that actually achieves that color without using any food coloring. But you don't have to use nuts in a cheesecake if you have an allergy. You can purely stick with a plain cheesecake and use fruit on it. Can I bake the cake without a water bath? So can you, Selena? I don't think she ever did. So I was always taught to use one.
Yeah, and water baths really save the cake. Even if you leave it in there maybe 5 minutes too long, a water bath is going to save it from the horrible cracks that you sometimes get.
Yeah. Yeah. So I probably would say stick to a water bath. I have seen recipes of cheesecakes that will bake outside of a water bath. I've never done it. I feel like I learned from somebody who mastered making these cakes. So why try something different when that process works every single time? The next question is the store paste the same as making it, and where can I purchase the paste? It is not. And like I said, you can Google pistachio paste online. I've done it. There's many varieties. I did not see the brand that Helen used to use, but I know she got it in a huge tub. In fact, when I had my shop in Atlanta, I called her to ask her where to get it from. But it's this huge tub, so you have to use it for more of a commercial purpose. So that's why I made my own. It's very easy. It achieves the same amount of flavor. You can add a little sugar to it if you want to sweeten it up, but you don't have to because of the sugar in the cheesecake. You just really process it down, and that's all a paste is just the nuts ground down. But you can buy it online. I would stay away from any variety that has any additional oils in it, because I don't know how they would mix into the batter and separate when it's baking. Are the ingredients always the same on the recipes? They're different, right?
They are.
Each one is different.
When you're adding chocolate to a batter, sometimes you'll have to add maybe an egg or an egg yolk, or if you're using pastes like hazelnut paste, it has a lot of oil in it. You might need an extra yolk. She knows better than I do. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but sometimes you do have to modify, take a little sugar away, maybe you have to add some. So It depends on the flavor.
But I think every recipe that she has, all of them were slightly different and unique into their own. It wasn't just like a base recipe and then you just add stuff. There's different chemistry with it. And that was one of the things that I think she mastered. I think we need to get her to write a cookbook.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. She's very private. She doesn't like to be in front of the camera, but
Yes. And somebody asked, where did the liquid chocolate come from? That's just melted white chocolate. I melt it on a double boiler, and white chocolate is much more temperamental than chocolate. So if you are going to add white chocolate to anything and you do need to melt it down, do it on a very low double boiler and do it very slowly. Otherwise it will seize up. So that was all of our questions. Have one person. Did I get you guys back?
oh,
Did
I'm
I
here.
get you guys back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think that was my connection. I apologize, guys. Did you hear my last comment, Selena?
I did not.
So it's directed towards you. It's Barbara from Independence Plaza. And she said, it's lovely to see you on here, and tell your mom hello.
Oh my God, thank you so much. So nice to
Celebrity already. Well, thank you. Selena, thanks so much for joining us. I loved having you on. I love you and your mother. And you
Oh, I lost you again.
one of the great getting to know you. Am I back on?
You're back on now.
Okay. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm having some internet problems. Welcome to pandemic 2021. Anyway, Selena, thanks for joining us. I'm so grateful for all that I've learned from you and your mom. And if anybody has missed part of the video, or if you want to share it with anybody, it's on YouTube at Home with Joseph, and it will also be posted on Aspire Design and Home website. A recipe will be coming for all of the registration people. And if you have any questions, message me at Home with Joseph on Instagram, and I'm happy to answer anything for anybody. Thank you for joining this week, and have a great week, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Bye.